Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
It's completely normal when we meet someone we like to want to know everything about them. We'd want to get close to that person. And if that person happens to have a secret, we'd have a natural desire to want to know what it is. In this case, one has two choices: staying with that person or staying away from that person. Let me tell you what my choice was when this happened to me. My name is Rosalind, and I'm 15 years old. I live with my dad and my brother. Mom passed away and my brother was small, and I ended up caring for all his needs. Dad was everything to us, as he loved us a lot. He liked to spend most of his time outside, though, and so I was responsible for everything inside the house, in addition to my studies, that is. Memories of my mom were the only thing I had left of her, and I would often just sit and think about her. On the first day of school, Dad was away traveling abroad. All the kids in my class were excited after hearing that we have a new teacher this year. When she entered our classroom, I was both pleased and shocked that she looked exactly like my mom. Even her smile was the same. Her name was Isabelle. I just adored her looks, her charismatic manner, and her charming voice. But I wasn't the only one who was charmed by her. All my friends liked her as well. I asked her to be my friend, and she was more than happy to. I told her that she reminded me of my mom. She smiled broadly and hugged me tight. I really missed Mom. Isabel told me that if I ever needed anything, I should just come to her, that it's what best friends do. It made me so happy. After school, I saw her waiting a bit up the street for a taxi. She looked so nice standing there in her makeup and nice clothes. I had told my brother that I would introduce him to her, but as we were walking towards her, a car stopped, and she got in and left. It was a very strange car. It had very dark tinted glass that prevented anyone from seeing inside. The next day, I asked her if she was married, and she said no. I told her I saw her get in a car yesterday, and that seemed to worry her for some reason, which caused me to worry too. She said that one of her relatives happened to see her, and they drove her home. Curious, I decided to watch the same spot again tomorrow to see if the same thing happened again. But I received a message that Dad had just got back, so I chose to head straight home. I was thrilled that Dad was back. I hugged him and told him how much I missed him. We talked a lot, and I told him about Isabelle and asked him to come to school and meet her. Unfortunately, she was absent the day Dad came to meet her. I began to worry about her some more. The day after that, I went to the same place at the same time, waited for her again. I wanted to know about the car with tinted glass. After school, Isabel came and waited again for the same car. It picked her up and drove away. When I went back home, Dad wasn't home. My brother told me that Dad had gotten a phone call and left. The day after, I saw Isabel at school, and she looked very happy. So I asked her why she was so happy that day, and she told me that she had wonderful news, that she would tell me about it later. That same day, I went to a friend's birthday party. Coincidentally, there was a nightclub near my friend's house, where I could see a bunch of weird people going in. Suddenly, I spotted Isabel, arriving and entering that place too. I felt really sad seeing her enter such a weird place. After the party, I went home disappointed. Dad saw the look on my face and asked me what was wrong. I didn't really feel like talking, so he changed the subject and said that he had great news to tell me. He was going to get married again. I was not expecting this. I was so shocked that I was speechless for a few seconds. Then I asked him, "What about Mom?" He tried to explain to me, but I was beyond listening at this point. I turned around and went to my room, leaving him alone with my brother. I sat there thinking about Mom, crying alone in my room. The next day, I was still angry, and I decided to ask Isabel about the nightclub. I went to her office at school and asked her what she was doing there last night. She started to explain, but I cut her off and told her that I was disappointed. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice behind me. It was Dad's. Dad started explaining in her place. "I'll tell you everything," he said. Isabel's mother was very sick, and she was working there as a part-time job to save up money for her mother's surgery. Rather than hearing the actual explanation, something else caught my attention. "You know her?" I exclaimed. "I mean, how is that possible?" And he said, "I met Isabel not too long ago. I told her that I had a daughter who attended the same school that she was teaching at. Then Isabel added, I didn't know that you were his daughter, but I loved you even before discovering that. Dad then said that that was what he was trying to tell me last night, that he was going to get married to Isabel. I broke into tears, hugging her and apologizing. Not only did I gain a mother that day, but a best friend too. Every one of us has a talent. It may be singing beautifully, drawing artistically, writing poetically. We're all different. Our special talents make us happy. We are all unique in our own way, living in a world full of peace, love, and happiness. But what if our talent became our bane? Well, my talent did become my bane. Let me tell you how. My name is Jenny, and I'm 16 years old. I lived in a quiet neighborhood with my parents and my little brother Matthew. I didn't have a lot of friends or hobbies. I was only interested in social media, but I always had a feeling that I had something unique, something that distinguished me from others. Turned out I was right. It all started on my grandmother's birthday. My family and I were traveling to her home to celebrate the occasion. The road was narrow and bumpy, with a rocky shoulder on one side and a river on the other. Dad was driving too fast, so obviously, Mom was a bit worried. Conversely, Matthew was excited. It was raining so hard that day that Dad feared the weather might get even worse, so he was driving faster than he should have, to try to arrive at Grandma's house quickly. I was worried too, but for a slightly different reason. I had a feeling of impending doom on that trip. The rain got progressively worse. There was almost continuous lightning and thunder. Suddenly, we saw a big truck that had stopped on the road ahead of us. Mom screamed. Dad swerved to avoid hitting the truck and lost control of the car, which had gone on one of its sides and off the road into the river. It was the most frightening situation I had ever experienced in my whole life. We went underwater, and I felt as if we were in an aquarium. Dad was unconscious, and his forehead was bleeding. Mom was struggling, and Matthew was paralyzed with fear, his eyes tightly shut. Then, my vision went dark. When I woke up, I found myself in a hospital bed, with a team of doctors around me. When I asked them about my family, the look on their faces told me that I was the sole survivor of that horrible accident. Several days had passed since the accident. I was having trouble sleeping. The doctors gave me some sleeping pills. They even tried hypnosis to help me sleep. Grandma came to visit me. She was very sad. She said I could come live with her. My whole life was turned upside down in an instant. A police officer at the hospital was kind enough to drive Grandma and I to her home. After he dropped us off, something strange happened. In a fraction of a second, I had a vision, a momentary premonition that something bad was going to happen to him. I saw him trying to catch a thief, and suddenly crashing into another car. So I thanked him for the ride, and told him to take care of himself, to be very careful. He smiled, and said that he will. The very next day, as I was watching the news, I saw a report that that very same kind officer had died in a car crash, just like my premonition. Grandma was upset when I told her what had happened. I didn't tell her that I had foreseen his death, because I knew that she wouldn't believe me. In fact, she might have even thought I was crazy. This strange turn of events happened again, with one of our neighbors, who visited us one day. She was a kind, lovely woman. I had a premonition that she would die in her kitchen due to a gas line explosion. I urged her to be careful with the cooking gas, because it could be so dangerous. But she just laughed and said that she loved cooking, and that there's nothing to fear. Grandma got a bit upset with me for making a big deal out of nothing. She said that I was just a little paranoid due to the accident, and that my imagination was getting way too overactive, and that I shouldn't try to scare people. Needless to say, the neighbor that I had warned did indeed die in a gas line explosion 4 days later. Coincidence? I think not. Am I somehow causing these incidents to happen? I couldn't help but think that I was somehow linked to the whole thing. I searched the internet for any information about this phenomena, and I found that it was common in people who had been involved in a traumatic experience, especially almost drowning incidents. I read a research that said that parts of the subject's brain would become very active. After our neighbor's accident, my aunt and uncle came to visit us. I had missed them a lot, but yet again, I had a premonition that they would have an accident going home. causing their car to explode and crash into the river. 2 days later, they were preparing to leave and head home. I begged them to stay one more night, but they said that they couldn't because they had work the next day. I told Grandma about my premonition, and she scolded me, told me to stop this nonsense. She thought it was my overactive imagination again. My uncle came in as Grandma was scolding me and asked me what was wrong. I wanted to say, "Nothing important, Uncle. Just premonitions of doom, that's all." But I didn't. I went to sleep instead and had a dream that Uncle was going to get run over by a car. Suddenly, I woke up to the sound of Uncle and Grandma's voices. They were talking about me, and it was raining outside. Uncle stood up and said that he had to get something from his car. I sat up straight and shouted, "No, don't go." Uncle said, "Jenny, it'll be fine. I'll just get something from the car." I couldn't dissuade him from going, so I followed him out. Uncle went out to his car and was standing by its door, which was facing the road. Then I saw the headlights. A car was coming down the road, driving towards us. I saw the car hit a flooded spot on the road and suddenly began sliding sideways, right towards Uncle. Instinctively, I made a decision to try and protect him. I had to at least try. I jumped in front of the swerving car. The driver saw me and tried to regain control. Suddenly, I felt a warm sunshine mysteriously coming down from the sky amidst the rain, and I felt calm and safe. And I had one final premonition before everything went dark. Hi, my name is Laura. I'm 23 years old, and I teach art. I recently got married to the love of my life, Norman. I considered him my friend, my brother, my son, and my husband. We loved to prank each other, even after we got married. For instance, one time I turned off all the lights in the apartment, dressed up as a monster, and scared the living daylights out of him when he came back from the store. Another time, he damaged my car. I put mayonnaise on his toast. I did worry sometimes that our jokes might go too far. I mean, he did get really mad at me once. He stopped talking to me for 2 days, even though I apologized profusely many times. After that, our pranks sort of stopped. I figured our pranking days were over. About a month later, I returned home to find a letter on the floor. I opened it and read it. "If you don't pay us 100,000 by Friday, we will kill Norman." I smiled. Norman was pranking me again. When he returned home, I hugged him and showed him his prank letter. He read it carefully, and his brow furrowed. He appeared seriously frightened and swore that this was not part of any prank. He told me that we needed to leave town as soon as possible. I asked him why, and he told me that before he married me, he had stolen a gold statue from a motorcycle gang. I asked him why he couldn't just return it with an apology, and he told me that the statue was worth a lot of money and could make us really wealthy. That night, an armed masked burglar broke into our apartment and confronted us with a gun. He said to Norman, "Hello, Norman, long time no see. You need to choose between the statue or your wife. Choose now." Norman was hesitant. Then he steadfastly said, "I can't give up the statue. Take my wife." The masked man turned towards me. He pointed the gun at me in a threatening manner. I was frantic. I was staring at Norman in shock. Suddenly, the masked man ripped off his mask. It was Keanu, Norman's brother. Norman sat down, laughing so hard he could hardly stop to breathe. Between laughs, he said, "This is payback for the last prank of yours. I was so mad at him that day, but it's all right. He doesn't know what I have planned for him."